Check. Good morning. Wagon R car for 3549, huh? That's yours? I think it's in the way. You give me the key, I'll ask.
Not in the way. I parked it on the side.
Side da. Give me the key, I'll ask Rajan. This is long press?
Long press on. Oh, it's on already.
Request everybody to please be seated. We will start in a few minutes. check. Can we start? Updated? Take a few seconds. Huh? Good morning. So we shall start. Just request 30 seconds of your time. Let's all just settle down, breathe in, breathe out, and then we'll start. Let's focus on the issue at hand, and we'll begin in 30 seconds. Thank you. So since this was a very important meeting we needed to have, we had a few questions and inquiries about this meeting, and I had spoken to Rojaka and Anitaka, and we all felt that it had to be done. So this is not a very organized meeting, but I would like to start by telling the survivors that this meeting and all of us here are firstly in support, and that's why this meeting is here. We are here to understand more about this situation. We are here to be informed, to enable, and to help in any way any of us here can for the survivors. So I'm going to get straight to the point, and I'm going to introduce our speakers today. But before that, we do have a few questions, general questions that have already been asked. So I will read them out here right now, and that may lead to the topic to further unfold. Firstly, the basics. What is sexual harassment? What are the different types of sexual harassment? What are the examples of sexual harassment? What should I do if I experience sexual harassment? What is the law? The law and sexual harassment, the due process. How do I file a complaint? Because I think a lot of the issues are coming with the problem that people are not coming forward or not able to come forward to make a complaint. If I am privy to information or harassment in my dance or music class, what should I do? And as a bystander, what is the intervention I can activate? So I'll take this on with Swarna. She's the founder of Prajnya, an NGO that works on gender equality related issues and peace education. Thank you.
Thank you, Satyajit. Thank you very much for having me here. Ramya sent this long list of questions, and I am a very good, very diligent student, so I answer Yerdin Vandirke. I will take a little bit of time, bear with me, because there are some things in a discussion about sexual harassment. Can you hear me better now? Yeah, thank you, Devika. In a discussion about sexual harassment, there is a lot of anger, a lot of grief, a lot of betrayal, a lot of emotion, but there isn't a lot of information that people are working with. And so I'm going to take a little bit of time to go over some of these commonly asked, commonly considered questions and misconceptions, and then we can kind of have a more interesting conversation after I've done this. So the first question on my question paper was, what is sexual harassment? And in recent years, I like to start with the International Labour Organization's description, which is a sex-based and or gender-based behavior that is unwelcome and offensive to its recipient. Now, the key word here is unwelcome. Unwelcome. I did not ask for it. I did not desire it. I was not in a position to choose. Unwelcome. Anything that is unwelcome and makes you feel ashamed, humiliated, or frightened is harassment. And we know this instinctively from school, from college, someone on the bus touches you and you may be 8 years old, but this was not right. This was not the same as my chitti pinching my cheeks. You know it instinctively. And so when that feeling comes of shame, humiliation, or fear when somebody approaches you, that is harassment. When the harassment is sexual or the person is targeted because of their gender, that wouldn't happen to you if you were a man, for example, that's sexual harassment. The golden rule about sexual harassment is it's not what the perpetrator intends. She's my daughter, she's my niece, yenga veetu korande. Not what the perpetrator intends, what the person at the receiving end feels. I want to say that again. It's not what the perpetrator intends. One of our reactions to harassment is, oh, he's such a good person. She's such a fine artist. But it's what the person at the receiving end feels. That's the filter. Sexual harassment is not about lust. Mayangi poi tottutar. It's not about lust. It's about, I can touch you, so I'll touch you. Let me show you who is the boss in this room. Sexual harassment is power play. It is not about love. It is not about romance. It is not about desire. It is not about hormones. It is about power. Do men experience sexual harassment? Let's get this question out of the way because, this is something, when you do a lot of work on gender equality, you always get the power men question. Yes, people of all genders experience sexual harassment. Young boys, vulnerable men, vulnerable by class, vulnerable by caste, vulnerable by dependence, men who do not conform to masculine stereotypes, men of marginalized identities are far more vulnerable than the average middle-class man. But women, girls, and little boys are far more likely to experience harassment than men in general. In the discussion that follows, I will keep talking about women because the law which tends to guide these discussions is not gender neutral. It is for the protection of women, in recognition of the fact that they are most commonly the victims. And important ideas to understand when we talk about sexual harassment, and be grateful, I will not be elaborating on them. Power play, violence, consent, impunity, the ability to get away with anything, inequality, and patriarchy. Okay? So having got the definition out of the way, let me talk about workplaces. Now, sadharanama, when we do this kind of workshop, we say workplaces, any place visited for work, outside the office, mode of transportation provided by your organization, forms of communication where you have a Skype meeting or a Zoom meeting, all of that. But there is something very specific about the arts workplace. So in an arts workplace could be your class, it could be your rehearsal space, it could be where you meet to organize a festival or something. It could be the performance venue itself, social settings around the season, or music festivals or dance festivals, video, audio, and social platforms on the internet, and studios where you rehearse or you record, now that everyone is doing little videos and reels and so on. It could be any of these things, and I'm sure each of you can add more. Don't be scared of this. So I was asked to talk about different types of harassment, and one reason we go into this is also to give people who sexual harassment. You know, when someone propositions you, Yenkuda Mahabalipuram va, stalking, obstructing someone's path to force one's attention on them, molestation, rape. And an example of this might be, you have a late night rehearsal because the perpetrator then assaults you after that, after the rehearsal, because they're overcome by the desire brought on by the performance of this romantic drama. Physical harassment could be unwelcome touching, hugging, groping, grazing, that you think, pattada, padaliya, I'm not sure. Talking very closely to somebody, sorry Sangeetha, staring at people's breasts, an experience that most women have, where men, out of some Indian cultural thing, will not look you in the eye and talk to you, but they will feel free to look at your breast, right? So under the pretext of teaching talam, for example, a music teacher might take your hand and guide it to your thigh, but the hand remains on the thigh much longer than is needed for 1 or 2 rounds of, and the teacher runs his eyes over the female students' bodies and walks around them, still looking at them, because he has to make sure they have the right body type for dance. Verbal, personal comments on appearance and body, and doesn't take the arts world for this. This is Indian culture, like marital rape. Appearances on people, narachirke, peritirke, and so on and so on, karitirke. Commenting on clothes, you only wear this, turning to every topic becomes a sexual topic, gossiping about others. So in a discussion about music reviews in the season, every time, say, on the kacheri and the review, when there's always gossip about the performer. Now that's a form of harassment, because what does it tell the listening student particularly? It says, this is how this person talks about me. That if I go up on stage, no matter how I sing or dance or act, what will remain is what people say about my personal life, in truth or falsely. Emotional, bullying, isolating a person, blackmail. And I should tell you, this is one type of sexual harassment that is very common in any workplace. It's called creating a hostile work environment. We hear a lot about quid pro quo harassment. That's actually, that takes even by patriarchal standards, that takes a lot of confidence. Hostile work environment is much easier to continue. Just make it impossible for a person to continue in that workplace. So there's a whisper network about a particular artist, but a powerful organizer makes it known that anyone who repeats the rumor will see their career ended. Now that's how many people at 22 will have the courage to stand up and say, "Ana enak idu nadandhathu." Digital, I think many of you in this room are more familiar with this. Taking someone's photo, sharing a phone number on social media, revenge porn. You've had like 5 days of dating and then you post all kinds of photos. Taking photos without permission and posting them. WhatsApp stalking, pornographic messages. So young couples study music together and have been doing so since their teens. And recently they have formed a romantic relationship. Someone at their music school has taken photos of them in a moment of intimacy and shared them on the school WhatsApp group. This is a form of sexual harassment as well. So as you see, it's not necessarily one perpetrator, one victim. It is a climate of harassment. It is actually what we otherwise call a rape culture. Right? So I wanted to go over all of those types because I think it's really important to acknowledge that when people complain about harassment, it won't only come in the form that you are expecting. It will come in a variety of forms, and all of those experiences and feelings are valid. So what should I do if I experience sexual harassment? First of all, recognize that it is sexual harassment. I think this is the big tarangal. It's like learning dance and having no sense of rhythm. Don't second guess yourself, which women do. Maybe padaliyo, maybe he didn't say that, maybe he meant it thinking I was his niece, who knows. Don't listen to the character testimonials other people give, because famously we are a country of people who write academic references saying she bears good moral character, you know. So don't, if you have an experience, you first consider it valid. You were harassed if you feel frightened, ashamed, humiliated, right? Document what happened. Record it in a diary, put down the time, the date, the place, who else was there, because you will need witnesses. Exactly what happened, how you felt. Later, if you file a complaint, somebody will ask you, and this is a very traumatic process. The first incident is traumatic, recalling it is traumatic, recording it is traumatic, and repeating it to a committee is very difficult. So 3 months down the line, they will say, did this happen in the morning? And you'll say, no, I had just finished lunch. On the third day of the hearing, you'll say, this was when they were serving tea. And somebody on that committee will say, you know, her story is not consistent. So write it down immediately. As difficult as it is, when you feel harassed, write it down. And the next thing is tell somebody else. Now, the question of witnesses is very difficult, because who is going to harass you? Have some sort of person who says, you know, you run into Devika outside and you say, Akka, this is what happened to me. So she comes into the committee and says, Annike paathen, oru aranmani nerathukulla paathen, that girl was trembling, or she was frantic, or vaayila vaartha varale. She is able to testify to your trauma, right? It is really important, but also I will tell you something else. There is virtually, I mean, very, very rarely do you have a one-time harasser. If it's worked once, they will try again and again and again, and the longer they get away with harassment, the more stories there will be. So if you tell somebody, chances are you will get a, mama, this happened to so-and-so. And then that allows you to do what one organization did, where a guy harassed employees for 25 years and was about 2 months from retirement when several women wrote a common complaint about him, sent it to the complaints committee, which had then been formed, and he lost his pension. He lost everything. He had to leave immediately. So there is some justice in the universe, but we have to seek it. If it's possible, tell the harasser that you are feeling harassed, and I'll give you a formulation for this. When you do this, I feel that. When you do this, when you touch me to show me talam, it makes me uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable. You make me uncomfortable makes it an uncomfortable confrontation. But when you do this, I feel this, allows them some chance of correcting their behavior. If they really didn't intend it, they can say, oh, you're sorry, Panamate. But if they did, then they did. And if you say it, then you can say, Channapram kuda, he continued with the behavior. It allows you to say this. And then find out where you can complain. If your institution has an internal committee, you can complain there. There is such a thing as a local committee, and I'm sorry, I will keep going for a while. You can also go to the police. This is really important for me to go through, because I think that these are, missing page. I want to quickly talk about what the law allows, because there is a lot of discussion about taking action after the fact and who can complain, who cannot complain. So the first thing I want to tell you about the law is that to pursue your chosen profession or occupation is your right. Nobody is doing you a favor by making it a safe place. It's your right. You know, so you are entitled to ask for safety. There is no need to be like, please, kunjo committee veingo. You know, you're right. And this is enshrined in the law itself. It is anchored. The Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act is anchored in fundamental rights. It covers all women and girls in all workplaces, formal, informal, and all forms of work fall under its scope, including studying and creative enterprises. The law makes employers and others in authoritative positions responsible for the safety of those who work or study in a given place. Formal organizations that have more than 10 employees have to draft a policy, constitute an internal committee, organize awareness programs, and report on their compliance. Smaller organizations, like if I run a music school with 3 students, have to take, people in that little setup can take their complaints to the local committee, which is set up by the district. What can we expect from an institutional internal committee? We get this question a lot because people think it's a court, people think it's the CBI. It's a fact-finding inquiry. Somebody says this happened to me, and it's their job to find out what happened and to ascertain what happened and to create a clear narrative. And so what they do then is they write a report. They have a certain amount of time. They write a report and they recommend a course of action which will come out of a multiple choice list that is enshrined in the internal, in the company policy, right? Beyond that, it is not the committee's job to punish the person. It is simply to recommend, and then the management or the leadership or the founders take that decision. The important thing to remember is that this is really an investigative committee. This is not a committee with abundant power. It can summon, but people can ignore the summons without a contempt of court kind of action. So if a person is unhappy with this decision, and it happens often enough, they can go to court. And I'm now on my final page, you will be relieved to know. There are a couple of questions related to this that people ask. One is, can another person complain for you? So your question, if I hear about something, can I complain? No, only in exceptional circumstances, which include the original victim being in a coma, right? So complaint has to come from the affected person under this law. Under this law. If something happened in 2015, can I still complain? Not according to this law. The complaint has to happen within 3 months, 4 months. It's a specified time. Can the institution not initiate an inquiry upon hearing rumors? Not really. Not really, because I want you to consider, I know this seems incredibly unfair, but I want you to consider the kinds of rumors that float around in the universe generally. If we began to take, if everybody began to take suo motu action on everything, there would be no justice and there would be no end to the process. And must the accused read the complaint? This doubt actually confuses me. Of course the accused person must read the complaint. It's what is called natural justice. You know, I cannot accuse you and then just try you without your knowing. It is only due process if they also know. So what can we do? It's the most important thing, no? What can we all do? And most of us, if we are fortunate, we are only bystanders all our lives. We are not victims. And hopefully none of us are perpetrators. We can recognize workplace sexual harassment as a real thing. It's not imaginary. People are not making trouble because they are bored. People are not making trouble because they want to become famous. Take it seriously. Believe somebody when they share their experience, because sharing is very difficult. How many times, the older women in this room, I'm asking all of us, how many times have we been in some public space where somebody has touched us, fondled us, pinched us, called out to us, and we've never told anybody about it because it's very hard to say. So when something as innocuous relatively that happens, and something happens to you in your workplace, which is a sacred place, particularly for artists, you know, you're not doing a job because it's a day job. You're there because your heart and your soul are there. Please believe them. Don't ignore the whisper networks. They are not gossip. There is no other mode of justice, so people say, don't anga tanya pohade. It's not a lie. It's not to make somebody suffer. Respond. And there are 4 things that we tell people in our workshops. If you can, if you see a moment of harassment, intervene directly.
Straight away. No.
When I said upset, yeah.
Hello. Yeah. I think I'll also just straight away jump in and thank you, Swarna, for all those insights. I think they're so important for us to hear again and again and again, I think. So, I thought I will just share my experiences of being an artist in the Carnatic music. How, what all complexities exist in this space, and the power structures which are within, and a brief history of what happened in the Me Too movement when it came out in 2018 and till today, what's happened. That's basically the flow. So as a young girl, I mean, I like Swarna said, I'm going to stick to a woman because I think women are the main survivors usually, so especially in our context today. Of course, I'm not going into, there are also men who are being harassed, but I'm just going to use the word, just disclaimer, girl, children. So as a young girl who comes from the field, I can talk from my own personal experience actually, because I came from a very small city called Ernakulam, and I came in the 80s, late 80s, I came to Chennai to make it big in the Carnatic music scene. And, you know, the first thing that strikes you is there is no, what do you call it, there's no, it's a very informal space. There's no direction on how you go about things. You're just by yourself. Especially if you have no, you know, big sugar daddy behind you or, you know, a big name supporting you and all those things. How does one survive? What are the nuances of being an artist who wants to survive in this field and want to make it big? So there is, it's all about networking. You realize that it's all about networking. Of course, you go to a guru, which the guru plays, I'll come to that later. The guru plays a very important role in your life. Having said that, beyond that, if you're going to, if you want to become a, if you want to take it up as a career or, you know, become a more serious learner of the art, how do you go about, you know, you have to network with artists, you have to network with other artists, co-artists, Sabha secretaries, organizers, people, audience, it goes on. So it's all about talking to people, being seen in public spaces, pleasing people, making, you know, having conversations. So how do you go about these things? And it was all very, it was not easy for me. And let me just say that and for all that I come from a privileged community, a caste community. And for me, if it was like that, you can imagine how it will be for somebody who is from a less privileged caste and less economically privileged person who comes, especially from outside Chennai, for example. How do they maneuver their way around? That's a big question. And this is where chances of abuse happens. Then, of course, like I said, the guru plays a huge role in your life. And the Guru Sishya tradition, of course, everybody talks about it, it's glorified. But it's also important to realize that that's where the problems also lie. So when the student comes, so I'm talking about any student now, when they come, they want to join this big guru and they come with so much awe. They have so much, they idolize the person. And and then they enter, and once they join the guru to learn from the person, they enter his space, his house. So they come at a very young age usually. And what happens is they carry on for some time, at least for 10 or 15 years. So they're practically molded by the guru. And here what happens is the guru is clearly in control. So it's an unequal relationship. Then also there is a lot of blurring of the art and the person. Because of if the student is already idolizing the guru so much, they're willing to do anything for the person, to impress him, to please him. So I think all these, just to set the scenario, the teacher has a huge responsibility not to misuse this. And this is where abuse can happen. And sexual abuse can happen, and it even gets normalized in some cases. Because the child comes there at such a very young age, and then they carry on for a long time there. And like Swarna was saying, sexual abuse is of so many forms. It's also the toxicity of the environment, where the guru can actually, you know, after a point of time, the child thinks that it's all about the guru and nothing else. And so they're even cut off from the other outer world, cut off from other people of their own age. So it's just, they think that they have this beautiful one-to-one relationship with their guru. And that gets normalized in their minds, which is so toxic, and which is, that's where the problems can start. And of course, the whole divine angle, where, you know, people think that we have this thing of saying that the guru is almost like God for us, right? So, and usually, like I was talking about, when you have parents who also are not, when they're not used to this kind of you know, urban environment, or if they're coming from the rural area or something, they have no clue of how these things happen here, and they don't even understand When they, where does the child go and who does the child talk to? They can't, for example, in my case, I can talk to my parents if something happened to me, but I can imagine there are so many children who cannot even have a conversation with their parents about when something happens to them, or even their own friends. They're scared to even tell anything. And even if they tell their parents, the parents don't, they deny it. They refuse to see the problem. So these are the complications that can come up for a child. I'm just talking about in my art space with in reference to the Carnatic music ecosystem. And, but on the other hand, the child or the student, they are also very passionate about their art. That's the sad truth, right? They want to become big. They want to achieve something in this space. So they don't want to give up what they are having also. And they may be really, genuinely a huge, this thing, have respect for their guru's art and the whole process and everything. So they want to make it big. They're scared of rejection. So if they come out and, you know, even talk to their friends or other people, what will happen to them? If scared of, like I said, they're scared of rejection, or they don't want to lose opportunities. They don't want to lose income if they've already started performing after a point of time. So all this is there. Then, so this is about the guru's, I'm just briefly just giving pointers. We can always come back to details later, maybe in the question answers. And then other power structures, so which exist in the field, the sabhas, the co-artists. If you've started performing with artists, the co-artists also have a say in many things. Artists, you stay together, you travel together, you go to objects. It's sadly, it's really sad, but we have to, we all have to agree, and I'm sure all the women in my field will agree that it's a highly male-centric, patriarchal system which exists even today. So it's really sad to see, like, after me, I have like 3-4 generations singing now. But even there, I still see the patriarchy continues to a certain extent. It's not, but I still have hope in the new generation. Of youngsters of today, I have a lot of hope. And I think this conversation is also very important. And the fact that we are having it is amazing. So, but still, I have to reiterate that patriarchy still exists. And that is a main problem even for us to have these conversations, to break these things. For example, like Swarna was saying, I have experienced it myself so many times, and I know even my younger friends still experience it. If a woman dresses in a certain way, you're immediately asked a question, why you dressed like this? If you wear jeans and go to some place. But a guy can wear shorts and come and listen to a concert. Nobody asks him anything. It's true. He'll come and sit in Ragasudha with shorts. Nobody cares. So, that's the complexity which exists in I hope I'm not going too fast. I'm also like, too many thoughts crowded in my mind, and I'm clear, right? What I'm saying, yeah. So now I'll just give you a brief kind of a timeline on the Me Too movement, which happened in the Carnatic music scene. The first complaints, I'm just giving like points. First complaints came out in 2018. It came on social media. Many of you know this, but I think it's important for us to just go through, reiterate what happened, which it sent huge shockwaves to all of us, but the survivors were all anonymous. Then a powerful statement was put out by many young musicians, signed by many senior artists and many of the artists in the field. Then there was some kind of a public hearing, which was an attempt to involve the field, but it was sad that nobody turned up. I remember this so well. We were some of these people which, I know, literally like 3-4 people you saw, no? I had this beautiful image of the whole community is going to turn up in numbers, and see that it also shows a lack of understanding from my side also. I had no idea what this, all of us, I think, we were all wondering what's going to happen, no? And then you think this beautiful one public hearing or whatever it was, and it was like my God, it was an anti-climax. It was sad, actually. Literally some 2-3 musicians were there, I think, and other senior artists were there, 2-3 people. And that showed how people were scared. That's what I understood later. That I was very disappointed, but I realized that many youngsters, and even today, they are very young musicians, are very scared to even acknowledge this in public. Then coming back to the timeline, Music Academy had their own ICC something process, and they took a decision to ban some of the perpetrators from the field. Then the Federation of Sabhas, there is something called a Federation of Sabhas, which is a group of 10 Sabhas, I think, or 10 or 12 Sabhas which are together. They decided to establish their own ICC, which they announced in November 2018. This was very problematic when it came out, and some of us worked with them for a while, and they were very understanding about that. Because there was a lot of problems because of who was in the company. In 2019, almost 1 year later, and again the problem here was nobody knew about this ICC. I mean, you make an ICC and then you publicize it. You send mails to musicians. You have all their mail IDs. You post it on social media. You talk about it. You have some workshops. Nothing was done. That was problematic. I found it very problematic. One workshop now, right? For all these years. In 2019, there was this GCMA, Global Carnatic Musicians Association, which was formed for the protection of the rights of Carnatic musicians and help and promotion of the art. That's what it says. The website then had problematic statements on sexual harassment and process of inquiry. But last I saw it, the website doesn't even exist. I went and saw it's not even there. And worse, all the accused were featured soon after in a series held by them. So as a community, only so much movement has happened. And then, as a community, if you look at the timeline, this is what has happened till then. 2019, I started something called Saha, and two initiatives came up, Saha and Care Spaces. Care Spaces was started by a bunch of young musicians who felt very strongly that they need to do something, and they're based basically in the US. And they're a very bright group, which they want to do a lot of, they want to bring about a lot of change, and they work on social media. And Saha was an initiative of friends. We are just a small group. It's just like, the idea is, we just want to create public awareness on this issue and to educate and sensitize people, facilitate conversations, that's it. Because we believe, so my personal thing was that looking at all this, what had happened, I realized that there's no magic here. It's not that, having an ICC, it just ticks a box, that's it. Just because you have an ICC, does the problem get solved? No. So there's a lot of layered approaches which have to be made. The community has to be engaged with the problem in their own ways. Each of us, all of us are responsible. So just to conclude, like Swarna was saying, many of us are bystanders. So even the bystanders are scared of the power structures. That's the problem. So even if we are not survivors or whatever, we are all still in the field, right? So for example, I'll tell you, if there are A, B, C, D, 3, 4 musicians who are doing very well, coming up very well in their careers, and D musician feels that something wrong, something seriously bad has happened, and this has to be talked about, and puts up a post on social media, it's highly likely that the musician D doesn't get called in a next festival, and the A, B, C are featured. So what does D do? So, I mean, see, for them, it's so, that particular concert in their festival is so important. They don't want to lose their opportunity. So these are, just to give an example. And then this one solution of having an ICC does not solve the issue. And then, of course, the basic chauvinism, the patriarchy has to change. Their attitude has to change. Like, always the survivors are suspected in the beginning. The minute, these are very interesting. I mean, I can talk about it later. I think I'm running out of time. But, interesting questions which came, like my own colleagues came and asked me, right? How, ivlo varshathukku appuram indha vandu solra. Like, what nonsense akka? Oh, 10 varsham munadi indha nadandha. Appo solrala. Hey, you know how tough it is for a girl to come out in public and say that this happened to her? I mean, do you have any idea? It's not, and the fact that she's done it, I mean, she's so brave that she's had the, and again, that's the other reason why, that's the other sad thing, that all these complaints are still anonymous. Because this, I reiterate again and again, the power structures in the field, oh my God, it's scary. It is really scary. And I mean, I'm seen as a powerful person. All of us are powerful. But that's the thing, we all have our own power. And how can each of us use our power to change this, is what I'm trying to say. Because all this has been normalized all these years. How can we change this? And because it's not about targeting X or Y. It's about dealing with this evil, which is sexual harassment. So I think I've kind of, yeah. So only if the community's level of engagement and understanding rises, there's hope for positive change. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll get straight to the questions. One interesting thing that you mentioned was, you said how long it takes for somebody to come out and talk about it. But one of the one of the points that people keep confronting us with is, oh, this is vendetta. He's complaining because they have a problem with the teacher, because something didn't happen and therefore complain. We have to realize it takes a lot for somebody to come out and complain. Somebody's not going to flippantly throw an accusation that, most often a complaint is met with this, that it's not a genuine complaint and that it's a vendetta. It's purposely they're maligning somebody because something didn't work out. So people have to understand that it takes a lot to complain. We faced a very small situation in Bharata Kalanjali in 2016, and we addressed it very, very quickly, because the first thing, like you said, is to say, yeah, it is happening. There is a potential for it, and so one of the questions I had is, one is of course the survivors, the victims, but how does the institution or the management? In many cases, there is no institution, there is no management. There is just one person, or probably the assistant. And most of the classes happen at home. And how do we move towards? I personally think that we need a massive cultural shift to happen. And when we say that, everybody thinks we're going to lose our culture. We are trying to change something culturally. Yes, we have to change something culturally if it's necessary. But as an institution, as the management, when a complaint comes, not even a complaint, when you notice something, what are the, forget the law, but what would be the first act that one should take forward?
Okay. When a complaint comes up, what should be the first thing? Actually take cognizance of it. Let people know that if you have a committee, let people know what the committee is, where the committee is, how to reach them, help them formulate a complaint. See, there are certain conventions that we follow anyway, which are that you can't just, sometimes people give phone numbers of committee members. Phone paniye complaint koduthrunga. That doesn't work. Adu ezhudano. Adu formula kodukano, because you cannot, then it remains in the realm of hearsay. It's like acting on gossip. So mentor the person to write a complaint if they are not able to do it. Provide support so create the institutional infrastructure and let people know it's there. Often, because the law mandates the committee and the policy, people will have one yeno tano policy in a corner, nobody knows about it. And then there'll be a committee, and then they'll find out when a case comes that the committee's tenure of 3 years is long over. So keep those things current and sort of be in readiness, but most of all, believe that there could be a problem. Now, as someone who's founded a feminist organization, I can easily say, in Prajnya, these things won't happen, but I know it can always happen, right? So I should be aware, I should make the information available of where help can be got. I think that's a half answer to your question.
At Rukmini Devi Natya Kshetra, one young girl, she had said that she's a little uncomfortable in the music class to Premnath. So Premnath asked the HOD music to observe the music class, without the teacher knowing about it. கொஞ்சம் 2-3 நாள் அப்சர்வ் பண்ணுங்க அவர் எப்படி பிஹேவ் பண்ணுறாருன்னு. And then he called him for a private meeting and spoke to him, and then he said, you don't need to come hereafter, and trained a student to become a singer, and that's how it went. And this was long before the big things happened. And these kind of things, because there may not be a committee, it may be a very small organization where one person takes all the decisions. It's not pushing it under the mat. That is the main thing.
I think, I want to say that there is such a... The local committee is where you're supposed to take your complaints. Now, I want to say that it's very hard for me to be an advocate for local committees, because districts have not set them all up equally well. So sometimes a district will have a committee or it won't have a committee, or in a district the size of Chennai, the committee will be in Paris or somewhere near Edilaham, and the student will be somewhere in Gumadipundi. So where are you going to go to file one complaint? Yaar aishindu pova. It becomes a very complicated process. So it's not ideal. And so one of the things I've been talking to a lot of arts groups since 2020. And one of the things I've been recommending is actually, what we used to have, your own professional guild, like the Federation of Sabhas, an association of independent music and dance teachers or something of the sort, which would then be where students were able to go. But those are solutions that you have to come up with as a community, and then they are predicated on what Devika says, the willingness to acknowledge a problem.
Shall I, there are like 1,000 questions. So I will read a few out, and I don't think this discussion is going to end today. I do hope that we can continue the same discussion in different spaces. Anybody who has spaces, please offer, and we can always continue this over.
Because Sangeetha brought up care spaces and because you've been mentoring them, Swarna, what does an organization like Care Spaces, who are founded and based outside India, when they initiate a signature campaign, for instance, that is right now against alleged sexual abuse in Kalakshetra, what do they do? How does a signature campaign, how is that taken forward? Because there have been so many signatures as well as anonymous signatures from ex-students, current staff, current students. What does a signature campaign do? Does it equip them legally, or what can be the next step?
So from the little bit that I know about the allegations in Kalakshetra, I think one of the issues is that the cases, many of the complaints are very old, and that people are hesitant to formally file the complaint. So in a situation like that, there are also questions that come up about the culture of the institution. Does it enable abuse? Does it adequately signal zero tolerance to abuse? And those are the sorts of questions that can't be, that don't fit into an ICC hearing. An internal complaints committee doesn't usually address those questions, especially if people are not sure how it works. So in a situation like that, Care Spaces, I've been working with Care Spaces and Saha, so I'm kind of attached to both of them. One of the things that Care Spaces does that Saha, let me put it this way, that they are well placed to do because of their location outside, is they actually offer peer mentoring, peer counseling. They've trained counselors who listen to people who have experienced abuse and just give them a place to talk, which is completely absent in the present Chennai ecosystem. This is something that people cannot do here because they are too deeply enmeshed in that system. But here what people are able to do is to raise the questions in a more immediate way, to network, to create solidarity networks in a more concrete way. Now people like Sangeetha or Satyajit, who are among the leading decision makers in the field here, they bring that kind of clout. So I've always seen them as complementary initiatives. So when Care Spaces puts out a signature campaign, it also allows people who are not located in Chennai, it makes it a problem that belongs to all of us. So I'm a signatory, for example. I'm not even an artist. It allows us to say this is important to us. Maybe because we value what institutions like Kalakshetra have brought. Maybe because we value what our taxes pay for when it becomes a central institution. Maybe because we value the principle of accountability anyway. So for whatever reason, it allows us to become part of that. Then it allows a second tier of advocacy, which forces people to look into an issue. It's not just about Kalakshetra. To my mind, it's about institutions around this country which are only now entering a culture where they're being held accountable, right? So in this moment, a signature campaign like that allows all of us to work together in different ways. So just like in a wedding, there are 100 million little jobs, and each one picks up the job that is closest to them. If all I can do is fold clothes, I will fold clothes and say, "Nanum poi help panna kalyanathile." In that spirit, I think everybody contributes to this journey of creating a different culture and holding institutions, teachers, power brokers accountable together. And I think that that's not something to underestimate. So it's important for us. Also, I think in 2023, we cannot draw borders and say, they are not here, we are not here. Part of the problem with injustice is it's injustice towards everybody. You know, it's not that it happened to X person in Y corner. If it happened there, it happened to me. We're willing to hashtag, I am Berlin, I am so-and-so, I am so-and-so, but we are not willing to own the journey to justice equally.
But can I just add something? No, but just to add to what, my thoughts, my 2 cents that, a signature campaign is important, but there's only so much a signature campaign can do also, which is what we observed in the beginning when we had the initial Me Too movement came out, and there was this amazing response from young musicians. They wrote a very powerful letter and I told about it earlier also, right? But after that, what happened? That's the thing, no? So signature campaign does help in bringing it to the front, and and now I think it's much more relevant because people are constantly talking about these things much more than from 2018. But having said that, again, the onus is on the sabhas or the institutions in that case because like she said, the legal thing is so complicated, and especially because it's an unprofessional space. There's no ICC, there's no committee, nobody's clear on the laws. So then, and our field is driven by perception. So a small thing is, giving a warning to the alleged perpetrator by the powers. I don't know, I can do, is that possible? No, it's not possible. Okay. I don't know. But some kind of, in the case of music, that, not featuring them in sabhas, sabhas not encouraging them for some time, that kind of a thing. So that is very important, I think, where the power structures can play a role. Because otherwise it's not going to make a difference. Because the alleged perpetrators, or what's the right word, I hope I'm using the right word, get the confidence that they can get away with and just continue doing what they're doing. So I think the community has to do something. And that's what I think, what can we do? Each of us have to think about that. The sabhas has to think about what they can do. The co-artists, the main artists, the top artists of today, they can talk about these things. Any artist, of course, I guess it's easier for senior people like us to talk about it. The youngsters are scared to talk about these things. But these are the things that we can do, I'm saying.
I have a question. So all of us teach at homes. We have students coming home. We have group classes happening. Children are coming home. Children go to teachers to their homes to learn music. And as minors, there is abuse that happens to minors. There is abuse that happens to other students also. As minors, especially, how do the parents actually deal with that situation? Because for the kid to go and tell the parent is a very difficult situation, as you all mentioned, and for the parent to deal with hearing that the teacher is somebody who has abused my child is also difficult. They may not believe that the teacher has done so because of this exalted position that the teacher has been given. And like now Akka spoke about, as a community we need to do something. So how do we as a community educate parents or educate the system that is going on right now, that you have kids and students coming home to learn music? How do we actually educate them to maneuver this space, or how do we actually maneuver this space also?
With children, there's a very clear law. And if there is any suspicion of abuse, you're supposed to take it to the police. In fact, the police are far more willing to act on POCSO cases than any other cases, because the law is so straightforward. And Tulir, Vidya would say, to a fault, but at least it's clear. So I don't think that thereby, in 2023, I don't think it's likely that a parent is not aware of the possibility of child sexual abuse. Because there's been for 2 decades, there's been so much training and awareness building and so on. But one possibility is also that if this is something you feel is a real issue, why not create a one-pager and give it to the parent at the time when the child enrolls? I want you to know, I want you to encourage your child to tell you if anything in the process of this, because I think that also builds trust in you as a fellow protector of the child, you know? I think that creating trust is the work of adults.
Absolutely.
Children trust, and then when they are not believed, they stop trusting.
This is what
But
I wanted to
fostering and building that trust is the work of the parent and the teacher and adults in that situation. So try this. Try doing a A5 back-to-back, kutti little handout on the rights that your child has. You know, listen to your child, and if your child's behavior is changing, you know, if they are part of class days, they have different psychosomatic cold or mudugavali or something that a child shouldn't have. Watch out for those signs. I think that there's enough out there that we can all become educators on these things. And it's just a good practice. It's just a good practice. But thank you for raising this.
So as a teacher at home, what do I do to kind of make it a space that actually communicates to the parent or to the student that it's zero tolerance for sexual abuse over here? How do I make my home? So, for example, if we are taking class, I take the student is at my home. Sometimes many teachers don't allow the parents to sit with the student, or when the parent is available, is there with the student, you take the student into a room, and then the class happens in the room, because that again, you know, you don't want the parent to be in class. So how do you maneuver that space? And you know, how do you communicate that this space is a safe space and sexual abuse is not tolerated here?
I think if I were a student in Pata class and my mother was sitting there, I would be mortified. I would not sing one note in tune. But I think if you can maybe put a chair or chairs outside the teaching room and leave the door open, that would be one thing. And none of us live in palaces, so we're also working with the space that is available and other people continuing to live their lives around us. So it might be that you have some ground rules. Velila chair potrukku, phone anikano, you know, things like that. And I think that any parent would be willing to put up with rules like that. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
after a
was
certain point, only the children will come because they trust you. Then you just have to keep the door open. Whether somebody comes or not, it's their choice. This is about what you can do, not what you can make them do.
Yeah.
Right?
I had a neighbor, upstairs neighbor, who the music teacher would come. The mother was working in a bank, and the servant girl would be sitting there. And but she was in the other room watching something, you know, her cell phone and all that. And this girl, I noticed, the teacher was holding on to her when she came down and all that. And then in front of me, he said, "AC room la ukkarlana vendangra," he said. Immediately I took action. I said, I think this is not right. I said, AC room e vena, nee onnu pannu, kadava tharandu veyi, opposite mami kitta solle, music class nadakka poradhu mami, unga kadava tharandu veyinga solle, and you sit there, you open the door and sit there. I told the teacher also, I said, you know, கதவு திறந்தது தான் நீங்கள் சொல்லி கொடுக்கணும் கிளாஸ், நான் அப்பப்போ வருவேன் அப்படின்னு சொன்னேன் நான் அந்த டீச்சருக்கு.
But it takes a community. Exactly. It takes a community.
Yeah, because the space is so informal and there is no institution, that's the problem. Like it happens in homes. So who
So a couple of things that I want to put out, because I had an association of artists, Bharatanatyam artists, and like in 2018, we all were woken up to the ground reality that harassment was happening to many artists, and of course we had to get together and find a solution, or we also formed an ICC immediately, and we had one of the best advocates, Justice Chandru, to advise us on this matter and all that. And subsequently, one or two complaints that we received privately about makeup artists, what action we could take was, we didn't publicize it, but we told the teachers who were complaining about this artist that stop employing him anymore. You don't use him at all. So that's one way of punishing him for all that harassment that he has done all these years. So that happened. And of course he was old, and he also lost his, I would say, he had to sit at home, and he had nobody calling him for shows. So that's it. So that was one thing that we do. So people wanted us to remove him from membership. So since the association laws were formed in 1987, the bylaws, and we don't have a clause which says that anybody who is found with suspicious behavior can be removed from membership, that has to be included in the bylaw for us to take any action in that sense. And that amendment of bylaws is a very long process, unfortunately, with the government of Tamil Nadu, and we are still working on it. We have several bylaws that we want to be included in the original bylaws, which were framed in 1987. And so that is one way in which we are assuring of action being taken, but not anything formally being announced because of the restrictions of the bylaws that we have, since we are an association. The other aspect that we faced recently, after the International Chess Federation inaugural event happened in Chennai, and we received an email complaint about one of the choreographers of the event. And immediately we contacted the ICC, and Justice Chandru put us on to the advocate, Mrs. Geeta Ramaseshan. And she wanted us to send immediately a reply that we have received this complaint from a victim, and we are sympathetic towards you, and we are going to take action. Unfortunately, after the first email, the victim went underground. She was untraceable for us. But whereas we are supposed to send a reply to her within 24 hours of receiving a complaint, we are ready to do it, and the mail kept bouncing back. And we tried to request our contacts in, it came from Bangalore. So we requested our contacts in Bangalore to trace this particular person who has lodged a complaint and all that. But unfortunately, she didn't come back to us. So we couldn't take the action further. Before that, the accused managed to get the support of other artists who were part of that group. And we got emails saying that no, he was perfect in his behavior. We had a very good time in the inaugural ceremony. Nothing untoward happened to us. So I don't think you should proceed with this. So we are stuck in that corner, But later on, when we had this long conversation with Justice Chandru, all he said to us was, a written complaint, like you said, is what is very important. And with just one written message or an email or an SMS, the perpetrator can be taken to court. He says the law has become so strong for the victims now, especially the female victims, that it is enough to pull them to court, even if there is no evidence of a photograph or a video or anything like that. So I am not sure of how far this is true, but in case, this is what we got to understand from him, and he is one of the leading lawyers now who's arguing such cases in the court. So from Abhay, our Association of Bharatanatyam Artists, within us, we are ready to just debar that person from a membership. But whether it is officially allowed in the bylaws, we are not sure. But we are principally agreeable to suspending him from membership. You know, with whatever we hear in social media, or we are together in that. Is that what I want to inform all of you, that we are together in that we are ready to suspend this particular person from the membership of ABAI for whatever, you know, however effective that is going to be. So the fact that somebody has been removed from the membership from an association itself should be a warning to many, I feel. So I know it's up to all of you to correct me if I'm wrong, or tell me whether this is a good step or a positive step towards such perpetrators. It's up to you to advise me on this. I'm open to suggestions.
Just might quickly respond. One thing is that you don't need to tell people what you did, because the reporting requirement is only that you say the complaint came, it was answered in so many days, and this is the action taken. You don't need to mention any names, so that's actually good. That's confidentiality is good practice.
Should that be put out in public?
No, you don't need to announce it and say such and such a person has been. No, because then you'll have to mention the people who complained against them. So that's not required. On the question of an SMS or something being enough to go to court, I think, I'm hardly in a position to contest something that Justice Chandru has told you, because he's by far more knowledgeable than me on this. But I think that I was talking about the internal committees, and those are relatively powerless. If you're taking this case to actual court, then that's a completely different kettle of fish, and an SMS or somebody else filing an FIR may be possible. So that's a different issue. It sounds to me, and I think Abhay's case highlights the challenge of ensuring justice in times that are changing very fast. It sounds like 1987 to 2023 is 35 years. So already a long time for bylaws to remain static. It sounds as if now it is urgent to change them, and maybe, each of us is asking, what can I do? What can I do? And maybe the first thing on your list is really expediting the change in the bylaws, to allow you to signal this, because you're right. Signaling is very important.
Yeah, I think I'd like to say that having worked with young people for a while, for a longish while in an institution in Kalakshetra, I'd like to say that I think the first thing, which I also heard Sangeetha ka speak about and everyone else, is to believe in what the person is saying. No matter the person may be lying, because I have talked to children, I know they are lying. I know they're creating a story for whatever reason, for some other justification. Maybe like people have told me, oh, she's pathologically difficult. It's all right. I think for all of us here to know that it's all right. Can I still listen to that child or young person speak? Because this is something I feel even in homes, we put aside people saying, she imagines these things. Nothing happened to her. She imagines it. And in institutions, it's even stronger. Because we have so many children, and we're always dismissing at least about 50% of them as hyper-imaginative. And when you come into the dance space, I would say you dismiss about 90% as imaginative or hyper-imaginative. I wish for this to be understood by every one of us, that can we just believe, not listen but believe. And maybe the more we believe, the more the truth will come. Perhaps. So this is one thing. The other question I have really is what Akka brought up, the sense of when there is an institution, now we're so worried about the culture of that institution, the history, its standing, and I'm not just talking of Kalakshetra, it could be any of our institutions tomorrow. There is an awe and an aura about it. So is there a language that can actually nail these institutions and nail perpetrators in these institutions and say, we are not damaging the aura of the institution. On the other hand, we are enhancing the aura of that institution. I think if we can say that, we will take many steps forward. Because the fear of saying, oh, we cannot say it about Kalakshetra, don't talk about Kalakshetra. I'm just using this word because today it is there in the public space. I belong from there. And what is this aura? In fact, the aura is diminished by these things. So can we understand and can we speak a language that says the aura is going to glow much more the minute I nail these people, the minute I nail these problems, the minute I stand up for people who are abused, no matter 30 years ago, no matter the person is dead or alive, some of them are gone, it doesn't matter. But if an institution has harbored sexual abuse, I think it's time for us to stand up and feel proud and say there is a glow in saying this institution will henceforth be, it'll glow brighter. So yeah, I just felt, thank you very much for this space. Thank you so much for this space.
To answer his question about safety of children, she was talking about POCSO. It is a very powerful law. It protects the identity of the child and that of the parents. And the Tamil Nadu police and the judicial system is not all that bad. There are a lot of people working towards safety of not just the child, but also to ensure that no matter how small that complaint is, that action is taken. And if, as parents, the child has come and told you something and we have not acted on it, we are equally responsible. The law can punish you as well. Okay? So if, in fact, there are different things you can do in your dance space if you think it's useful to have a security camera or something where the parents can watch you live on their mobile phones. Or there are many ways of protecting yourself as a teacher, because I do understand that this is real and we don't know what can trigger a situation. But protecting children, like she said, is a very powerful mechanism which is in place. So in a way, if you're a child and you feel, you even say, I am uncomfortable, that is enough. That one word is enough. And for those in Kalakshetra, I just want to say that it takes a lot of courage to even come this far with what you have said. And if you're listening to whatever's happening here, you need to know that we are all, standing by you. And don't be scared. There are a lot of academies, lot of institutions that can show you a future. There are many of us, and don't be afraid. Put yourself in a place that is safe. That is the first thing you should do for yourself. Feel safe. We are a lot of us here who can help you with your future as artists. And like Akka said, the institution encourage anything that's wrong. And that is the respect. I personally think that is when we will respect the authorities. That is when we're going to respect those in power. You're in power for a reason. And I hope you too have the courage, like the survivors who came out and spoke. I hope you too have the courage to say, we want to do something about this. And thank you, Akka, Rojaka, for taking action and for, doing whatever we can with our limited resources. But I think together we are stronger. Thanks for this today. I think it's a very important conversation. And my space is also available for more conversations, Satya.
So there are, as I said, plenty of questions. I'm going to read out one question, and I think it's very important in the cultural shift context. And I mean, anybody can answer this question. And I think we need to repeat questions and we need to repeat answers so that it gets into us. You want to do Tattadu 100 times, we have to do this 200 times. How to differentiate between blind reverence for the Guru and being cognizant of the potential harm that would affect the student in the name of absolute respect for whatever the teacher demands. I'll repeat. How to differentiate between the blind reverence for the Guru and being cognizant of the potential harm that would affect the student in the name of absolute respect for whatever the teacher demands. I'd like to start on that. It is an aspect of what I believe in and practice. Firstly, I don't hold myself as the guru. I don't think that I'm there to give everything for the child and the child has to learn everything from me. I happen to be a facilitator. I'm in that space. But I think a lot of that learning is by the student themselves. And I'm there to facilitate. So the minute I have a position that I'm very neutral here, I'm a learner too, and I'm not taking this, I'm not creating this aura about myself that, you know, I'm this person and you have to listen to me, and I'm equally learning with you. I think that already creates a shift. Small things, many of you may not believe it, but you don't have to touch. The other TM the other day said, somebody asked him about Gurukula, and he had a very hard answer for it. And it felt hard at first, but then I think sometimes you have to take a hard stance and look at what, under the pretext of Gurukula, what is happening. He's talking about that. And I think there's a lot more nonsense happening under that rather than any good. And the good, we don't have a Gurukula system, that's the truth. And we want to somehow fix everything into a Gurukula system and fit it and squeeze it in saying this is a Gurukula system. But that doesn't happen. We have to also start moving towards a professional way of functioning. It may seem a Western cultural paradigm, but leave that aside. Don't give it any labels or identities. But I think we have to establish professional working spaces. So that's from my side. As a guru, don't be a guru.
And there are some very good.
Because it's easy. I mean, I'm glad that question came up and that you made that point. But the thing is that we shouldn't only look at it and say it's the Gurukula system or a traditional way of working. I come from a contemporary theatre background, and people look at me in the same way as people look at a guru, and I have to keep saying no, don't deify me. I am as human as you are, and I am not a teddy bear or some sort of a figure. So you have to start realizing that this idolatry, this idolation that comes is what builds the patriarchy, and that is equal for the guru and, as Jyotsna was saying, for the institution. Don't hold anything up so high that it is infallible and you can trust it at all cost. So you have to, and we've had a lot of wonderful points being made here, but you should also start helping that patriarchy, to start thinking through this, because it's not just the responsibility of the potential victims, but the potential abusers also have to know what their limits are, and counseling is perfectly good for that, and counseling has to happen both ways, so the teachers also get counseling on what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, touch, to ask permission to touch, and that you can, in certain circumstances touch, but in certain circumstances when it's a child, you're not allowed to touch. That's where it is today, and so you have to start working on those things. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add to the two things, I think Sati was talking about this particular, I agree with you, Praveen, but the art form that we practice, it's got this totally, totally unreasonable way of looking at it, as though it's like some divine art form and we are all gods there, that enables these perpetrators to do what they are. And I'm not denying what you said. Of course, it's there everywhere. Idolation happens in theatre also. But theatre is a far more democratic space. I think so. No, okay. But if you come to our space, you'll realize how bad it is. I mean, it's unexplainable. And like Sati says, he's probably one of the few things like that. But 90% of gurus think that they are doing a huge. I don't mean to disrespect to any gurus when I say that. I have to be careful. But that's the culture that's been ingrained in all of us. And the other thing I want to say is that, yes, that is why the bystanders, again I reiterate, even to what she was saying, Lasya, that I think we're all privileged in this room because we're even talking about this so as though we figure out that, oh yeah, I can send my daughter to, I can make my daughter aware because but there are so many parents who don't know this. You're saying that the POSCO Act is there and you can do this, but we know that, that's why we're saying it. But there are parents who, even if they know, they won't do it. So like to reiterate what Praveen said, I think it's so important, that's why that these conversations have to happen in different groups. And parents, educate parents, and if parents don't, sometimes parents don't want to listen also. They will be in denial, how many ever times you tell them. Because they don't want to lose the guru's, so for them guru is bigger than anything else, and they work towards whole thing. So sometimes the friends have to help. So that's where I feel the youngsters and the boys, I'm so glad to see some men over here. The guys, your language has to change. You have to start having these serious conversations among yourselves in smaller groups, that way you show confidence to the women around you, your girlfriends, all your friends who you hang out with. All those small things matter, and educate people who, even in your groups, who have no clue of what this is. There'll be some people among you who are more knowledgeable about these things. Some people may not even look at it in the right way. They'll think like all those things that we talked about earlier. So these educations can happen in so many ways.
Namaste, Ka. Namaste, Ka. Actually, basically, don't you think the reason behind it, the idealism or the guru, what we create, it's all of us, because we give the image for the teacher or guru or in a certain way. Like Atte's quote is there, art without fear. I'm also alumni of Kalakshitra. So, art without fear and a concept le dhaan naanga padikkiradhukku porom. Ana padikkiradhukku pona andha edathila mostly what happens? The teachers actually creates a fear. Am I right or wrong? Am I right or wrong? Okay, in a next question, this whole program happened, I think, mainly because right now some fretting and fuming happened. Because of that, we are all here to talk about it. And now a lot of information is gone, of course. It is valuable information, no doubt about it. And the information should reach to the people, I think, below 30. Here, most of us are above 30, I think. Am I right? Below 30 should get the information. Above 30, we don't get much problems. But we are all talking who are all above 30. What is the use of talking with the elderly people? Just discussion, it's a gossip. Sorry, don't mind it. It is, it's going to be in a certain way like not giving the value. Here, if it is a young girls are there, okay, we are going to Kalakshetra, and if you are talking to the young girls, it's valuable. Other than that, discussing and talking, I'm not talking. This is a start, but we should do those things, and we should be able to take out that fear for the students, and the teacher-students relationship is actually like how a Western country, a student is talking to a professor. They talk to Mr. their name, and they talk to them this thing. I respect my teacher. I do namaskaram. I have whole respect. That doesn't mean that everything I should have my own idea. Am I right? But the teacher won't let them do it actually. These things should be changed. Then only I think basically these kind of thing can be changed a bit. I don't know, I'm wrong. Of course, I'll be. No, this is actually, I just told him.
What is the point of speaking to older people? So first of all, let me do a commercial. My organization, Prajnya, speaks to a lot of young people routinely. But it is also important to speak to older people because older people hold power in institutions. You know, at 22, in fact, frankly, even 2 years ago, nobody listened to me. You have to, in India, you have to cross a certain grayness threshold for people to take you seriously. Then you can sit in a room like this and say, idida nyayam. So this is really important also. But you're right. And if you invite me to your class, I'll come.
Yeah, and this is a start, no? Because the fact that Satyajit is called. So that's where the power structures come in play, no? If you want to go to a Kalakshetra, the power structure in Kalakshetra must welcome you.
Exactly. I just told you because there is one more reason for that. Because Kalakshetra, these issues happening mainly, I know that fretting and fuming is happening through Kalakshetra. I know that most of the people are here because of that. I'm not against any person, and it is my own institution. I have my own respect, and if you talk something, it is only wellness for the institution. So even all of us, if Jyotsnaka, whatever she spoke, there is a love towards the institution, it's always there. The thing, the power on the topmost person, anywhere, wherever it is, Indian hierarchy, I can see that power goes to one person. Why it is not distributed? Okay, Abhay, there is a committee, president, secretary, okay, they take decision with at least 4 people, at least 11 people. Why these kind of rules and regulations are not coming? How we, and the same thing, இப்போ இதுக்கு ஒரு victim வந்துடுது, நம்ம சொல்லியாச்சுன்னு வச்சுக்கோங்களேன், who can protect them? And நீங்களே சொல்லியாச்சு, it will take time. அவ்வளோ நாளைக்கு இருக்கிற harassment, how she will bear it? And yeah, these kind of questions, how we can answer, this is a...
The governing board, for example, is one of the places where the 600 signatures help. So this is not happening quietly in a corner, only, you know, Kalakshetra and Kalakshetra Pattu per Therinjava. It is happening and we all know it. So when we sign and we are not from this circle, we are bearing witness to a crisis that is unfolding. That we are also watching what you do. And you know, while I was listening to you and then the comments thereafter, I'm also a history student and a political scientist primarily, but I will confine my comments to the present context. I'm struck by how often denial and an unwillingness to be accountable is a hallmark actually of mediocrity and insecurity. You are unwilling, you are willing to step aside in your classroom because you are secure and you are confident in your art. But no matter what the realm, people will not make room for change, and that's not something we cannot change them, but we can press for institutional change within the existing law, the existing norms, the existing channels of accountability. And this is where all the different parts of this particular moment come together for me.
Namaste everyone. Namaste everyone. All through these conversations, I've been able to gain a lot, and thank you for creating this space. Having said that, what is the way to knock at the doors of Kalakshetra? It's not as if they don't know we all are talking about this. What is the formal way to make the director reply? What is the formal approach for them to answer to why so many of us are spending our time here and many more hours like this? No problem. But what is the way for them to open the doors, for them to give anyone answer that yes, something like this is happening and we'll look at it, or no, nothing like this is happening? So far, many people from inside Kalakshetra have been speaking about this, and the management knows this. Nobody has so far said one word as to nothing like this is happening. I'm also waiting for the past so many months to hear at least from one person to state that no, all this is completely wrong. I mean, we have never heard anything, not one soul. Not students, not teachers, not staff, not alumni. Many of them are not participating because they are insecure for their own reasons, quite rightly so. What is the way to knock at the doors? What is the key? What will make them open the door and answer?
So when I started, I wanted to, I'm not denying your issue, but we're not talking only about Kalakshetra, but yes, Kalakshetra was one of the reasons. In fact, when I spoke to Rojaka and one of the teachers called my mother to complain, I said, why is it we can't do anything about this? You know, this is ridiculous. But I think this forum, the start of this and have more discussions is one of the ways that you can, that there is a larger social consciousness and there's a larger social movement, which hopefully, I hope I'm not being too romantic here, but will cause that cultural shift. And then everything else will change. You know, we can't always expect institutions are designed in a manner to be full of inertia. And they will not move, they will not budge. But like Lase said, if a few people start moving out of Kalakshetra and find other equally good institutions to train in, things are moving already.
That's why the collective power is amazing. And like I said, if just one ICC is there, they're just ticking a box. Nothing can happen even with the ICC. Maybe more can happen with all of us talking.
I'm actually, let me turn the question back to you because I'm looking, remiss, I don't make it to anything in the season for many good reasons, but I'm looking around and I see faces that I've seen on posters and invitations. You are all prominent performing artists in this room. What is stopping you from going together, not to this chief minister, but this is a central government institution, this particular institution. Go to the Ministry of Culture, you know, show your faces. But this is also, then I will say, a moment that is very hard to show your face anywhere. You know, we're all looking out for our backsides. So think about what it will take, who will make the change, who gets to decide. This is when it's important to not just have a moment of outrage, but understand what is the structure of the institution, what are the bylaws, what is the law under which the institution is formed, who is the decision, which is the section of the Ministry of Culture in the Government of India. But we are not asking these questions. You know, we are happy with the anger. Anger is just sort of a very happy zone to be in because you feel like you've done something by being angry. But this is the hard work. The next step of locating the person, the boring person to whom, you know, you show up and they're intimidated by the presence of these eminent artists, you know, flustered and saying, tea, chai le aana. That's the moment you want. You want to show them that you care, that this is not, yeah. And that moment should also include other people. You know, this is again coming back to the question about the signatures. This is our problem. This is not their problem, you know. And if it is a question of the diminution of the institution, it's also in a very different way about the conservation of our arts, which are not secured by putting them in a dabba and praying to them. It's really by opening up space like this, allowing the breeze to flow, allowing things to change, embracing that change. This is not, none of our arts have been static for 4,000 years. And I think stepping, in a way, as a political scientist, I'm listening to this and I'm hearing resonances for other debates around India today, you know. I think in your sphere, this is a moment for your proactive citizenship, for you to show that you won't just be angry, but you will do something. You will find out the boring things and take the next step. And that you won't allow anyone to tell you that in the institution, eppadi irundha dhaan and art safe irkum. You know, that definition, don't allow anyone to do it.
Yeah. My question is about grooming and coercion. So as learning starts very early in the arts, pre-adolescence, adolescence, pre-teens, what happens is the communication of grooming is very inconspicuous. It's sometimes also non-verbal. And the moment when the harassment takes place is not a function of that instance. It's all the years of grooming that's happened, you know, all the manipulation. And my references are various accounts of my friends, women who are musicians and dancers. And the trepidation towards coming out is because it takes time for them to convince themselves that they have been manipulated, because it's a very gray area. So my question is, how do we spot signs of grooming and how do we pre-handle this situation?
How do you spot as in the person who's going through this? Or
Yeah.
if you are somebody's friend, I was just mentioning that, how
Right.
you can also, advise
Both ways,
them or
because
counsel
if they
them
are
and-
kids, sorry.
Yeah, like one thing is if you are already, X or Y is going through this and they're not able to identify it themselves and you see it, then it's if you have a good relationship with that person and you can talk to your friend and say that, this is not right, what is happening to you is not right. So that kind of a recognition that she gets.
Majorly that, because there are kids involved, so it
They
may
don't
not
even
be
realize.
apparent to them.
Exactly. But people outside can see that. See, we see
Yes,
it, right?
yes.
And you're in a more empowered space,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
So again here, see, even among friends there are power equations. There are small, and somebody like you, if you go and tell that person, no, it is also a warning to the perpetrator who's doing it. Because then they know that, there's somebody else who knows about this, so let me. So these are all small signals you can send, and maybe like how we're saying, how we can also help the perpetrators also stop doing these things. If we can do that, that's what we want ultimately, right? So these are ways of guiding your own, that's why I say if you can talk to your own friends, circles, where you see such things happening. And you don't ignore them, you don't look the other way. That's very important. And don't be scared of saying it, because you are in a position of power any day.
I think one has to be super alert to fault. So that's how we also identified, Anna, in the doku Anna vande bike kathukodukku kooptaru. I said, wait, you're learning dance here. Why should he teach you how to ride a bike when you yourself have a brother who can teach you how to ride a bike? It's not okay. It is absolutely not okay. That was the first, that's like a big warning. This is a no-no. So you have to be extremely, as parents, as teachers, as institution managers, you have to be super, super alert to this. It's okay if people say you're being fussy, you're being, teacher asked you to come home for a lesson, but that communication wasn't put to the management that you've been asked to come home is not okay. You can be called bureaucratic. I don't care. You get our permission, not just permission. Why do you want that class to be held there? Class has to be held here. I'm saying in our situation, there is a place, come here and have the class here. There's no excuse for having any other space. So you have to be extremely alert to avoid this and to spot that there's something not okay. Do not be oversensitive is what I would say.
The definition that she began with has to be internalized by everybody, all the institutions. I think these are things that institution heads must know, and teachers and students. The definition that you gave in the beginning, according to law. And then this being alert and acting on.
Sorry, I keep grabbing the mic. I want to say something that I've always felt over the years of doing this work. The thing that the first grooming is almost what we do with children. Somebody comes home and they say, Enga variya? And we say, Po, auntie Kupadra, Po. Why? Child is not interested. Child wants to play. We never allow a child agency on these matters. Who do I want to sit next to? Whose muddy do I want to go to? Yaar yana konjala, yarukku na kiss kodukano. We don't give children any choice. So we kind of, we prepare them for grooming also. We should teach them. Unak venda na venda. I have a niece and I adore her and I'm always ready to conjify her, but I always say, Maitri, I feel like cuddling you. And she says, I'm busy right now. And I say, okay, let me know when you're free. She has a choice. Later on, I want her to be able to say no to anything, and to know that her no is valid. So we should be signaling that from the get-go, And so it may not be relevant, but I feel like since the question of grooming has come up.
But again, to add to that, again, we come from a lot of privilege, many of us. So what happens to people who come from the, the rural areas, who come in from outskirts of, outside Chennai? There are so many students coming to learn from big gurus, and So they come with, no clue of how to, sorry.
No, yeah, to just continue with
Just,
that.
I'm reiterating the same thing again and again.
Absolutely. Just acknowledging that India, at least there are prominent dance schools here. Maybe 10 of the dance schools are here. There are thousands of dance schools. Every Kutti street has a dance class these days. And I'm also thinking about how it's a very large system comprising of parents, students, teachers, friends, and sensitization in all of these areas is a must. Because when we were talking about creating professional spaces for arts, so I remember how there are so many screens, even in the field of art, which is used by the perpetrator to hide behind, like things like, if you're really passionate about this art, you would stay the night. You would stay the night, you would stay that long time, and you would learn. And that's encouraged as a narrative in the community. And to sometimes, so we all deal with stories in our performances, itihasam lende edukkaradu, all that. And then we quote those stories also to say, oh, avala vanda anda kalathila, you look at how this art was taught to that person. He probably came up. And as a 5 or 6 year old, I was like, oh, wow, okay, so I need to be that. I need to be that dedicated in order to learn. But just to start a conversation by saying, how do we, first of all, say, like any professional setup, saying that in the Madri, there is this policy here, even if it's one Kutti dance class, to say that this is the person you can approach to, just on the notice board. Every dance class these days has one notice board or a WhatsApp group or something, to just put up saying, we have the space, this is whom you can come and talk to, and to have continuous discussions with the students, even if they are 4 and 5 years old, because they understand, they know when something is not okay. They may not be able to verbalize and say, idu nadandadu, adu nadandadu, and that's also another thing. So when we go and complain, we were talking about, ma'am was telling about how we need to believe and start there, and it's also about the sensitivity with which you talk further and handle that. Because that event is highly traumatic, and when we ask for exact details of how it happened, it may not be there. It would be very hazy. There's a sense of trauma preserved in the body also. So they may miss details, they may go all over the place. So to be very, very careful in holding that space for them in that conversation, and to constantly have discussions with students, with teachers, very often, to just come as a gathering and have a discussion. So
and to be able to make that appointment. We did it actually. We secured that appointment with the minister, and yes, he scrambled and asked, chai leke aao. But to follow through, that's what I meant. Twitter gets a response. Twitter gets an accumulation of response in the political space. Let me tell you, don't discount Twitter. Forget your Facebook and Instagram. It's never taken seriously. So if we want to move forward on any issue, on this particular issue about my alumni association, there needs to be a collective, there needs to be a commitment, and there has to be a commitment of time and resources, and a follow-up.
The issue with the earlier signature campaign, I mean, the pandemic came and it was hard to follow up on anything. But I think that there are also tools like right to information petitions, and these are citizens' tools that we don't use. There are writ petitions in the High Court that are available to us if we can find someone who will draft in terms of fundamental rights violations, which is what workplace sexual harassment is. There are writ petitions available. There are all sorts of citizens' tools available. We barely begin to use them. The only tool we use with some regularity is voting, and not even that most of the time. So I think, it is possible also when we talk about follow-up to accept that people will have different levels of engagement at different movements, which is why numbers matter. So if going to Delhi is something Anita can do, RTI petition drafting may be something somebody else can do. So sharing the work of changing the culture, I think, is very important, and doing it without a sense of territoriality. I think if we can give up that territoriality and share the work, we can get this done.
I'm very grateful for this time and space for making it happen. What appealed to me when you said there must be a cultural change. Culture is, now I'm seeing that every house has a different culture. My neighborhood is from a different culture. So we have been, as an institution, as in arts, in the context of arts, in the context, he was saying it should be in the grooming. So what would be, will it be good if we can include this in the education at different levels, according to different age groups, so that it is standard and formal, and it's time and again it's been altering, to the altering context, it's changing. Like we call, என்ன சொல்லுவோம், மதம்னு சொல்கிறதுக்கு பதிலாக இன்னொரு வேர்டு ஏதோ சொல்லுவோமே, சைவம் எல்லாம் இருக்கு இல்லையா, அதை சமயம்னு சொல்லுவோம். According to the changing times, we can include or in the education system.
There are organizations that are working with schools. My organization, Prajnya, does a lot of work with college students, officers, and so on, but there are people who work with schools, and we do sometimes as well. But we also do a format, and excuse the commercial, called the Community Cafe, where if you invite me to your house and invite 4 or 5 people like you do for a Vetala Park or something, we will sit and have a conversation over tea, and that's good enough. Because seminars, workshops sometimes are not safe spaces for everybody. So we will come. If you call us, we will come. And all it takes is a cup of tea, a few friends who feel comfortable with each other, 1 hour of your time on a Sunday. And, we can talk about these issues in the way that you want, on your terms. And this is something that we've been doing since 2012. So happy to come along any time that you call us. But change, social change, cultural change is like the attack of termites in a house. You don't know it's happening. You can't see it. You can't measure it. You can't say, 50% vanduta. Suddenly the wall falls. Then you know.
No, so just to add to her, what she said, Saha, we started in 2018 after all this, 2019. So the idea was to create safe spaces for women. We called it that. Where women, in fact, the first meeting I remember so well, because some of my friends are also here, part of Saha. Some girls came, and it's all word of mouth. I said, I'm not going to put anything on social media because everybody's scared. I realized that. And I said, let's just call whoever I know and whoever wants to come. And you won't believe the first meeting, everybody just vented. And they, after venting, they said, I feel so good, Akka. All of them were just talking, a lot of things, but not, connected with these gender issues or what. It's just a space where they could just vent out. So so the I judge. You feel open to say what you want. And sorry, men are not allowed right now. It's only women. But there are men who are proactive, probably will get them. But that's what we do. We are trying to, and then after, sadly the pandemic came soon after. So we did some Zoom conversations where we had Swarna talking for us, giving education on same things, very similar to what she said today. So that the artist community can know about it more. So these are ways you can form your own groups. You can form your own safe spaces. That's one way of educating. Because this is very important. It's not, it's easier said than done.
We'll have to, I think we're getting there. So, yeah.
I'll just make this very quick because we've been on this topic of Kalakshetra. I just have a very quick anecdote, it won't take more than a minute, about Rukmini Devi herself. She was somebody that did not believe in cruelty to animals. Just to shift this a little bit, but I think it's the same thing. She did not believe in abusing animals, and she was somebody who would take it to the roads. Like many of us here, she would be hands-on. She would stop her car, stop somebody and tell them, "Adika kudadu theriyuma? If I hit you like this, won't it pain? You mustn't." And then she will take the stick away. She was like hands-on. Like many of us are saying, we need to be hands-on with abuse. But there's one more thing she did, and that's why I felt I resonated with what she said. She became a member of parliament, and the one thing she did there was to pass the animal welfare bill. So I think somewhere this change needs to be at two ends of that spectrum. We need to have the courage to stop the bullock cart man from, banging up the animal. We need to nail people at this level, but we also need to have the courage to make policy change. And I think that's for all of us, any of us. It doesn't matter if, how we do it, but I just thought I'll share this anecdote. Thank you.
So I'm a tech person and I work at IIT Madras Research Park. So, and I also work for persons with disabilities. So I start for children with autism and CP. So there I've been working for all, bringing awareness of how do we actually listen to them. So we also covered a lot of topics here. It's not just about the artist here, and I'm with BK for almost 6 years. So it's bringing me a lot of thoughts about the persons with disability. We keep fighting for them, and how do we bring up a child. So I think many of us, we also consider our pets. If the pets doesn't want to sit on our lap, we just leave them. We just allow them to go. But I don't think the same happens with the child at home. So yes, I say paatu padi kaatu, dance adi kaatu, everything we do, but we don't listen for the choices if they want. I particularly work for a software that's helping persons with speech disorders to communicate. It's not just communicate. I always talk about expressing their feelings. So just use the picture and talk about. So when Anna was saying that we do have something, but being here for 6 years, I also feel I have a lot of things within me. I don't know where do I share it. Every time I get a chance to speak to Anna or Akka, or they call me up for something else, I have something to say, but I don't know if this is the right platform to mention it. Every time I keep looking at them with some question to myself, and I don't know if I'm the person to even tell that. So maybe Anna, a request to you is put everything on one place where all of us can come. It's not just, I think I'm good enough to talk to both of you. I don't know if all the students here will also have the courage to bring points to you. Maybe something that's going to help all the students here, as we talk about the entire world to come forward and talk. And she was saying all right now here are going to fight for things, because I was also part of the rights for persons with disabilities. We were walking to Delhi, as she was mentioning, out of so many people who keep signing for anything that's happening with the organization, I also volunteer. I work for volunteer at Vidyasagar. So we keep doing many things, but there'll be one or two person who comes forward and get the thing done. So maybe something we'll all work together and put it there and make it sure that everyone can reach out to the place and things get better for us. Yeah, thank you.
We do have every 3-month review with all individual students.
The one-on-one.
We do have one-on-one talk.
So I'm also wondering if we should wait for the 3 months if something is blocking us today and
Definitely not. Definitely not. I have a question for the parents, and we should wrap up now. Is what would be, as an institution, would you be okay if we use a word such as sex or sex education to talk to your children now? And what would the right age be? Because if we want to conduct a workshop or an education seminar for children, would you be okay bringing your children forward, for this sort of a topic? Because I know a lot of parents are uncomfortable and they don't want to open out these phrases to the children too early on. So my question to the parents is, please let us know, especially the Bharata Kalanjali parents, please let us know, and we would like to start immediately. We would like to have the children right from our Kuti group to have education, and they do have it in school now, and I think we should also do it here. because the space is different, the context is different, and we need to move on to that. So I request you're here and a few more parents, please check within your own groups and let us know immediately. And anybody else, or shall we wind up? Is there a sexual harassment policy in Kalakshetra, and can we get an RTI? And
Technically, I believe, from what I've heard, there is a policy, there is a committee, but you would be within your right to put in an RTI. RTIs have to be done by individuals. So if you did that, that would be an extremely useful thing. And if many people did it, it would be very effective, because they can't say, oh, mail post varliye. அத்தனை பேரும் ஆக்சுவலி நீங்கள் கோஆர்டினேட் பண்ணி இங்கேருந்து ஒரு 10 பேர் அதே நாள் அதே கொஸ்டின் போட்டிங்களான்னா harder to so ask, can we have access to the policy? These things are supposed to be in the public domain. The one thing that when we advise organizations, we say, don't give the members' personal phone number and address, but you should list them, you know. They also have a right to privacy and safety. But you can ask, who are the members? What is the policy? Can we see the policy?
should it be done through a legal expert?
Not actually, RTI is meant for you and me. It's not meant for lawyers. So you ask a question in your own words. Amma, romba simple பண்ணலாம் அதே. எங்க போணும்?
Police station.
போலீஸ் ஸ்டேஷனில் போஸ்ட் ஆஃபீஸ் நீங்கள் ஒரு ஃபார்மேட் இருக்குது. ஆர்டிஐ வெப்சைட் போனாலே அதில் போட்டு உங்களோட கொஸ்டினை கேட்டால், டோன்ட் ஆஸ்க் 50 questions. ஆஸ்க் 1 or 2 questions that can be answered. And then போஸ்ட் ஆஃபீஸில் போய் ரெஜிஸ்டர்ட் போஸ்ட்டில் அனுப்பிச்சா போகும். You have to pay 10 rupees or something for the processing charge. It's a very, very easy process, and it's a very hard one, right? So we should use it. So please do that. Ask about the policy, ask about the committee, and leave it at that. We don't even know who is there, right? So start with that.
I think we'll wrap up with this.
Sorry for taking your time. This is to refer to Nidesh's point on saying we should have spoken more to youngsters. This graying of hair or this size has not reduced my insecurity with the society to face men, to face sexual harassment. Even today, when I walk for rehearsals early in the morning or late at night at the railway stations or bus stops, I have to do this and walk. Men just come walking as if there is nobody in front of them, as if I am transparent or they are transparent. I don't know who is. So I don't think any of us are aware of the kind of atrocities that happen against women. Institutions are just one of those. So we are working against a very, very large system which is totally against women. So also against anybody who is innocent, maybe innocent men also. So that would be my reply to you, that first, this is a very good beginning, and my graying has not helped me.
I'm glad all of us could be here today. So I'm not going to thank anybody, because there's nothing, we all have to just keep doing this. Again, shout out to all the survivors who are watching us, and there are, I think, plenty of them watching online, because some of them prefer to be anonymous. And we are all here to support in any which way we can. We have experts, we have ordinary people, all of us are here for you. And with that, I'd like to end the session. Thank you all. Thank all of you and all of us. Thank you.